From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Dan Harary, that's me once again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Live from Hollywood. It is Paranormal Tonight. I'm Dan Harary. This is my little studio office here in Beverly Hills. And tonight I have a very dear friend of mine who's our special guest, and she lives a few blocks away, also in Beverly Hills. So I'm going to get to her in a second. Hope you all had a nice holiday, Thanksgiving, and you have nice plans for Christmas and the New Year and all these wonderful things. Thank you all, the people that email me with nice notes and social media things. I'm glad you enjoy my show. I enjoy doing it very much. And in fact, my first show in January will be the 9th, and that'll be exactly 1 year since I started the show with Margie Kay and Race Hobbs, my brother Race, who is my producer. So we're coming up on a year of this show, and let me get into my guest here for tonight. Tonight we have a friend of mine, like me. She is a native of New Jersey. Her name is Christina Englehardt. She's had many careers in the entertainment industry. She's worked as an actress, a model, a photographer, a film producer, and an author. She's based here in LA, actually down the street from me, like I said, in Beverly Hills. And today she runs a company you may have heard of. It's called Fleischer Animation Studios. Fleischer is home to Popeye and Betty Boop. And we're going to talk about Betty Boop at the end of tonight's episode here. As a teenage model, Christina had a secret relationship with none other than Woody Allen in New York City for 7 years, and we're going to talk about that. From 1984 to 96, Christina served as a muse to the great Italian filmmaker Federico Fellini. She accompanied him on set during the production of his final 4 films, and she also shared with him a highly mysterious adventure among the Mayan pyramid ruins of the Yucatan Peninsula, where she and Fellini met the legendary literary shaman Carlos Castaneda. So we're going to talk about that. In 1984, an interdimensional entity, which called itself You, began to reveal itself to Christina and Fellini through many dozens of phone calls for years. And that's just huge. And we're going to talk a lot about this interdimensional voice that she heard for years that told her things to do, called You. You also presented Christina with a private UFO experience on the night of her wedding in Italy, which is a pretty cool story. She believes that You purposely brought her and Fellini together to inspire Fellini during the production of his final films. Christina produced an award-winning documentary called Towards the Moon with Fellini, in which she filmed Fellini on the sets of some of his final movies. And she also chronicled her experiences with Fellini in her wonderful book, also called Towards the Moon with Fellini. Now, here's the book. Christina, I'm giving you a plug here for your book. I love this book, okay? I've read this book twice. This is a really good book, Towards the Moon with Fellini, a memoir by Christina Englehardt. I can't do it right because it's got a glare there, but buy this book. It's a great book. I've read it twice. A devotee of the clairvoyant who comes from a bloodline of psychics and healers, Christina has spent the better part of her life studying ancient beliefs, sorcery, magic, and the ethereal. She's had unique experiences with shamans, astrologers, philosophers, and theologians. She's one of the most interesting people that I think I've probably met in my 45 years in Hollywood. Okay, Race, let's bring in the one and only my friend, Christina Englehardt. Here she is. There she is. Hi.
Hello. Hello, dear friend. And
how did I do with that? Was that good?
Thank you for honoring all the nuances that make our lives and our energies and our connections to the little things in life, to the chapters. If life's a book, our many chapters are many pages, and hopefully some great words in the making.
That's very sweet. Also, I neglected to say, Christina is one of the founding members of my group called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And she's coming to our holiday party next Saturday. So I can't wait to see you there in person. Okay, so I have some dopey questions because this is a dopey show. So let's go through these and we'll just rock and roll, Christina. We'll see how it goes. All right, here we go. All right, first question. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you're from, what your interests were as a child, and a little bit about your parents, who they were and what they did.
Okay, so obviously my parents are immigrants from Germany, and I didn't learn to really speak English, even though I'm born in New Jersey. I didn't really learn to speak English until probably kindergarten, because my parents didn't become citizens until I was 7 years old. They had to be sponsored to come in to the United States because their childhood was World War II, Germany. They had bombs dropping on their homes. They saw truly the crimes and the criminals of war. And they were not the people that, were out there on the front fields, doing the fighting. They were the ordinary people who were, dodging from bullets and truly sad stories. So I kind of grew up with hearing these stories and feeling very empathetic to my family. And of course, saying, what's war? What's this? What's that? Who are these? And also, I'm a combination of 3 religions: Lutheran, Catholic, and Jewish. And they were all fighting amongst themselves. So I just felt this enormous burden. Oh my gosh, everything that's been in the lineage of history, of theology, of religion, it piqued my interest. Why were these 3 religions, all loving God, fighting amongst each other? And you say, well, what do you mean the Lutherans and the Catholics? Let me tell you, they did not get along in Europe. And well, we say Lutheran, then in Northern Europe, it was Protestants. It's pretty much all the thing. And that went on for years. And the bloodshed was terrible. And I kind of grew up hearing that. And my grandmother, from my mother's mother, she was a card reader. And during World War II, that's how she got food on the table. She would read for other women who lost their husbands, or is my husband coming back, or what's going on. And she read throughout the war. And she learned from her grandmother, and that grandmother learned from her grandmother. So I'm the first granddaughter, as the story goes. And when I was about 6 years old, seeing my grandmother in Germany, because we were flying back and forth from New Jersey to Germany. I call myself a Jersey German. And of course I saw her doing this, and I was like, immediately, what are you doing? And she was like shushing me away. You're too young, but you are the family member who's supposed to inherit this gift. And I bothered her that day until she said, fine, here's your lesson. Da, 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 da. So within 10 minutes, there was all the cards laid out. And I absorbed it like a sponge. And from that moment on, that's what I absorbed myself with. Other kids were playing Barbies or doing this or that. I was doing metaphysics. By the age of 10, I was buying books on astrology. I bought my first decks. I went from minor arcana to major arcana. And so it just kept growing. And by the time I was 15, I had a library of esoteric books. And because I was kind of isolated from not people really figuring me out, and being isolated as a child post-war and living in a Jewish neighborhood, so nobody liked me. And so, I tried to be understanding and feel. I felt so bad as a child, like, oh my God, my inheritance, my people. And of course, as we come today to understand, people will fight over anything in war. If there's money, if there's power, if there's ego, if there's negativities, there's a good chance there'll be some kind of a war. And it breaks my heart. And here we are. We're always in this perpetual who's fighting who somewhere in the world. And I kind of having that as a background, and it haunted me. And I say that. And a lot of people I would read for, I felt connected to those people who died unexpectedly, or were taken through war, or were taken in untimely matters. So having already an esoteric background, having already studied astrology, I also had this echo of the spirits that were kind of wandering and felt like, where am I? What happened? And it was all stories of my own relatives. I felt them in dreams. So I had that chapter of my life. So by the time I was 15, 16, I was an esoteric child, and I couldn't relate to people my own age. And we moved from the Jersey Shore, from Asbury Park to Asbury, New Jersey. There's 2 Asburys in New Jersey.
I know you're the only person. Yeah, so I'm from Asbury Park, as
You're
people
from Asbury
know.
Park, and I went from one Asbury to the other.
To the other, which and of course there's Haight Ashbury, which people always confuse me with, with the H. All right. So speaking of age 15, I have to do this. I have to embarrass you.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
But that was how I was prepared for what you're going to ask me. I have a feeling.
Oh yeah, you know exactly. How could I not? All right, so Christina, you were 15 years old. You're walking home from school one day, a guy pulls up in a fancy car with a diamond earring, and he says to you, "You should be a model." All right, Race, let's put up number one, please. Look at you. I mean, look at you. You were like unbelievably attractive. He gave you a contact in New York, and you started your modeling career. What was that era like for you there?
She's still attractive. What the hell you?
Oh, she's not. Oh, please.
Thank you. Well, and that's true. We moved that Asbury, New Jersey. When we moved from the park to the woods, I mean, when I say woods, our driveway was like a half a mile long, and our road was called Gravel Hill Road. And
that says it all. Yeah, gravel. That says it all.
I lived on Gravel Hill Road. Our address is Rural Route number 1, Gravel Hill Road.
Sounds like Green Acres. Remember that?
It was Green.
You lived Green Acres in New Jersey.
Well, even probably more wild, because they at least had farms. This was truly wilderness. And
why did you trust? Sorry, wait, hold on. You're 15. A strange man comes. Didn't your parents ever tell you don't talk to men in cars? With strangers. What made you trust this guy?
Well, I'm just walking up Gravel Hill Road, and this car speeds up, stops, backs up, and he leans out. He didn't get out of his car, and he said, "You should be a model, and here's, and here I know who you should contact if you go to New York."
And as a spiritual psychic person, did you have the feeling like, yeah, I think he's right, or did you just know right away?
Well, you have to understand, I went from the shore to isolation. We had over 100 acres, and we were on the top of a mountain, and we had thousands of acres. Truly, we were the only house within a mile. Okay. And I was bored out of my tears. But again, I was doing my metaphysical work. I was studying. I was doing poetry, playing guitar, all of those personal growth things that you do when you're isolated. And I just knew that I was going to reach out into the world. And I was already doing astrology. I knew my astrology, that I was a psychic creative healer, and how was I going to show up in the world? And here goes a guy driving down the road. I think his name was Gary, and he hands me a card and
changed your life completely and utterly.
I also had great instinct. And I said, being a Sagittarius, we are one for adventure. So
you went with it. You went for it, and you went with it. All right. So you had a relationship with Woody Allen in New York for 7 years. Race number 2, please. How did you meet him? I know you met him at Elaine. So tell us briefly how you met him, and what was that era like for you?
Well, once again, I live in the country, and going to high school and going into New York, because when I started going to New York, that guy who gave me the card was to a photographer, a very well-known photographer, a fashion photographer. So he did my first screen tests, and he did my first headshots. And with that, I went to different agencies. I did, up and down the streets, going to different houses. I started doing 17 magazine, co-ed magazines. I got with Wilhelmina. So I was doing what most models do. And then I show up. After school, I'd take a bus, or sometimes, I was able to get my schedule well situated, because school's over by 2-3, and I took a bus, and then I would, plan my schedule so I could stay in the city overnight, because I got friends with somebody who lived out in New Jersey, that photographer, and he let me stay at his house. And so I kind of built a family of Manhattanites who supported me in my modeling career. They just said, and there was the eternal torture, if you could only lose another 15 pounds. And I was starving myself, with the classic models. But anyway, I was tall enough, thin enough, and I showed up to all the auditions. And I did all the teenage stuff, co-ed, 17, that era of magazines and such. And one night with this photographer, God bless him, Andy Unangst, fabulous photographer, he said, let's go out to dinner tonight. And, you can crash, because he always let me crash on his sofa. And he was really a gentleman. He was like a brother to me because he lived out in New Jersey. So he knew my parents. So it was like the small world. I felt very protected. And that night we went to Elaine's, and I had just done one of my 17 magazines. So, I was full of myself, that I got my first 17 spread with, doing fashion and food and clothing, all the things that they have in those magazines. And I'm sitting at Elaine, and I could look across, and there's Woody Allen staring at me. And of course, he was clever to place his table where he sat right next to the ladies' room. So I figured, okay, but
that's a good move. I'm gonna have to try that sometime.
So and he was staring at me the whole night, and I was with at least 10 people at this nice round table, and it was so obvious. And I just thought, I'll just be silly, and I took the little cocktail napkin and I unfolded it, and inside I wrote in the tiniest letters my phone number, folded it up. On the outside I wrote, "You signed enough autograph, here's mine." Wow. And I walked by to use the ladies' room. I dropped it in front of him, walked to the restroom, walked back, finished my dinner, and went home. And I never thought anything of it. And then 3 days later, I had an answering service called Bells Are Ringing. That was what you did back then. If you didn't have the taper box and you traveled a lot, you'd call in and they'd tell you what your messages are. And they said, so-and-so called, Mr. Allen called. And I didn't think at all, Mr. Allen?
Mr. Allen.
Who's Mr. Allen? So I called back this number, and, this woman answers the phone, Mr. Allen's residence. And I go, and I didn't know how to approach. I said, I know a lot of Mr. Allens. Which Mr. Allen is this? This is Woody Allen. I said, oh my God. Oh, okay. So,
and that's when you started to see. I want to move ahead. We have so much to do. Race number 3, please. All right. So you were the real life inspiration, Christina, for the Mariel Hemingway character Tracy in Manhattan, the movie. Would you say, is that correct?
I would say I am probably a compilation, because remember, he is that kind of artist, like Fellini, like other great artists, like Picasso. They sometimes have one muse, but many of them have multiple muse. They take the variety and they create this new character. But I felt, because I was there at the time, and of all the girls that I found out later that he might have had other relationships with, she was the closest to my appearance. So I felt like he cherry-picked this character, Tracy. So I do feel I was a great influence. I can't say I'm the one, but I can say I am a fragment of that.
Okay, I think that's true. All right, race number 4. So just real quick, and we don't want to talk about the controversy, but when the controversy happened with Woody, you were in the news. If anyone is to Google your name, as you know, Christina, it's like you and Woody Allen is everything that comes up, not even the Fellini stuff. It's the Woody Allen stuff. What's that like for you now, so many years later?
Once somebody said, watch out for getting ink, because if you ask for it, you get it. So, it was funny because it was right at the height of the Me Too movement. And I had people approach me and saying, we know you were with Woody. And Ronan Farrow was one of them, who said, listen, you're no stranger. We know about you. So we want you to be part of this movement. Okay. And I said, well, I wasn't a victim. I really cared about this relationship. So, I will say that, I was probably not young. I was too young to make certain decisions. So I'll take responsibility for being too young. And I'll also, hand out responsibility for someone older, knowing that. But, remember, I studied theology throughout history. That was pretty normal to have, that scenario. So at that time, I didn't think it was that unusual. And also I remember my ego, I thought I was that special that someone like him would see me, because that's...
Well, you are that special. I mean, you were with
I don't know
the
about that.
you were
I-
with one of the world's all-time great comedic geniuses.
Yes.
Unquestioned
I admired him.
comedic genius. You were with him in an innocent age for you and for him, you know. And I mean, it told you he was in high school and college. He and John Lennon were my heroes. So you have nothing. If anything, I think it's just a fascinating couple of years of your life
But
that you have to be with this guy.
In lieu of the Me Too movement, and so, you know, I'm trying to walk through that era, that moment in time where women finally have a voice to say, this was uncomfortable, this was wrong. You know, a lot of women were victims. I wasn't claiming a victim, but in a way, people said, yes, you were, you just didn't know it. But I will say this, that I wanted to go through the Me Too movement without making men angry or without making women angry. I wanted to take responsibility for what I thought I was as a very evolved soul. And, you know, I was glad that women could stand up for themselves. And here was the one big call. The thing that I took away from the HBO special that was also done on this was, you know, if the question is, would you allow your children, your daughters, your teenage daughters to date a 42-year-old man? I said, absolutely not. And yet I could say that as my adult self, but my childhood self at that time, because there was no Me Too, there was no, you know, evolution. It was all hush. So that is I'd like to finish it on that as the understanding I took with it and the responsibility.
Okay, sure. I understand that. We have a few minutes and we could start here. In 1984, your friend Jerry DeMarlo, a psychic in New York City, told you to move immediately to Los Angeles because on a certain date, you were going to meet a famous Italian movie director. You did, and it happened exactly like she predicted. How scary was it to move to LA then, and how did you meet that famous man? And race, let's put up number 5, please. Race number 5. All right, that's Federico Fellini. And Christina, tell us that little story in the next 3 minutes before we have commercial.
So obviously I'm living in Manhattan. I left when I got out of high school, I stayed in Manhattan, of course, to be near Woody, to be modeling, to be all of those things. And because of my interest in esoteric work, I met Jerry DeMarlo, who was born 1919. And she was like a psychic mama. I had someone I could really develop. I was doing tarot. She taught me more astrology. So we had a great, great exchange. And she was giving me readings and she was blowing my mind away. And she was someone who was fostering an expression of me being a reader, combining astrology and tarot numerology. So the readings I do today are very similar to what she was doing. And she had said to me after many years, that's it, kid. I want you to get out of New York, pack your bags. You're not coming back. You might visit, but you're not coming back to live. You're going to move to LA. You have to be there by October 20th. And this is maybe like end of August. So I had 2.5 months. You have to be in LA on October 20th. You're going to meet a famous Italian director. You're going to move to Rome and you're going to hear voices from outer space. Get out. And she literally shushed me out. She's never done that before. I was like, oh my God. She was adamant. And she was basically saying she wanted me to stop this relationship. You know who? What we were talking about. That was going nowhere.
Right,
and she was watching out for me. And lo and behold, on October 20th, the phone rang. A lady called, said, you don't like me and I don't like you. But I have to go to a dinner with an Italian director and I can't go alone. And I've called everybody and nobody can come. And you're at the bottom of my shit list. Now, no one would have said, forget that. But she didn't know that I was there waiting for this call. So I said, all right, I'm ready. Shall I meet you? You pick me up? Yes, we'll come pick you up. And lo and behold, a limousine pulls up in front of my home like an hour or 2 hours later. And I get in the car, not knowing who I was going to meet. And I'm getting into a limo with an entourage of Italian filmmakers. And lo and behold, a gentleman turns to me, ciao, sono Federico Fellini. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's all right. So we have to take a break, but it's amazing that your psychic friend told you exactly what was going to happen.
Exactly.
And it happened exactly that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've ever heard anything quite that remarkable. All
Yeah.
right, Race, let's take a quick break, pay a few bills, come back with Christina Englehardt.
The UNX Network classes and workshops are enrolling now for 2025. If you're interested in psychic protection, chakra balancing, dowsing, or perhaps healing with sound and music, visit unxnetwork.com to see our complete series of live and on-demand classes and workshops hosted by the one and only Margie K. For example, in January 2025, you could spend 4 Saturdays with Margie for her exclusive live remote viewing workshop. Margie K is one of the most accomplished remote viewers in the world, and she will share her secrets and totally unique methods in this course. Some courses are open now. Seating is limited for these live courses, so register now at unxnetwork.com. UNX members use promo code XMEM for an additional 15% discount. Ray Hobbs here for the UNX Network as we present a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. They apply Cathara energy work with all of their plants and products. All of their products are made in small batches and third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm's topical salve. It comes in 1 ounce and half-ounce sizes made with all natural ingredients. And from now until January 2nd, use promo code KUNXHoliday for an additional 15% off all CBD products. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UNX Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com. Promo code KUNX Holiday.
And we're back, and we're live from Hollywood. Paranormal Tonight with my little blonde friend, Christina. There you are. We have so much to go do now, so I want to plow through some stuff with you. Between 84 and 96, you and Fellini were haunted by a mysterious voice that you both believed was not of this earth and possibly not even of this dimension. The voice called itself you and spoke to you and Fellini over the phone many, many times, making odd demands, offering counseling, and the voice told Fellini he was to be a conduit to help mankind through an orchestrated and carefully crafted plan. These are your words that I'm stealing. You were part of that plan, and I know the voice gave you and Fellini and all the members of his entourage different colors. So race number 6, tell us about the colors and Fellini and this era when you're now living in Italy and hanging with Fellini all the time. Race number 6.
So obviously that October 20th, the phone rings and I tell you that I'm picked up and I get into a limo and this gentleman says, ciao, sono Federico Fellini. We go to dinner And while we're sitting at dinner, the person who invited me was saying, Mr. Fellini, you know, Christina does tarot and astrology, as if it were something wrong. And he said, oh, but I like that. And she says, well, you know, I'm spiritual. Look, I have a crystal. And I opened my purse. I had a crystal. And she said, look, I have two. And I opened my purse and I said, one for you, one for you. I gave everyone a crystal. Are we happy now? So the goal is I was trying to make this connection. And Federico thought this was very funny, almost like an energetic cat fight. But, you know, I was getting along with everybody.
Right.
And so we finished the dinner and now they're bringing me home and they were dropping me off. And I'm thinking, I just left New York City. I left everything for a dinner to shake hands and say hello to Fellini. I thought, oh, this can't happen. So I said, everyone, can I please invite you into my home? I have a wonderful slideshow of photography because as a photographer, a hobbyist, I'd like to invite you. So the girl said, no, thank you. She had other things to do. But Fellini's entourage came into my living room and I used to take a picture off the wall and turn on my projector. And I have these wall-size images of all this photography I did around the world.
I'm sorry, Race, we can kill that picture, please. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And among those pictures was Chichen Itza, Tulum, Uxmal, because I would go to Tulum. I just found that, you know, an unusual place to visit. I was called to it. So while he's sitting there and I was playing George Winston music, the images on the wall, and Federico turned to me when he saw Chichen Itza, Tulum. He said, oh, you know, the voices, have they told you? Have they contacted you? And I said, I don't know voices. I have my voices. I don't know about your voices. And he said, no. So finished the slideshow and he was very upset or very agitated by these images. I didn't know that the following day they're going there to meet Carlos Castaneda. So thank you very much. Thank you for the slideshow. Wonderful. Good night. And they get up and leave. And then I'm thinking to myself, good night, good night. I left New York. I left everything. I literally, for a slideshow and a dinner, I couldn't have that. So I stayed up all night with knowing all my esoteric, the cards, the this, the that. I wrote a package. I literally stayed up all night because I thought this is important. And I just shoved everything in a big manila envelope. And I'm like, okay, what hotel is he staying in? You know, a lot of celebrities, they don't leave their real name. So I figured I'm going to call everyone. And
you did.
First hotel, the Hilton. Is there a Mr. Fellini saying? Yes, there is. I'm like,
that's miraculous. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm on something. So I drive there at 7 a.m. because I stayed up all night in my little jogging suit with my little package. And I'm standing at the concierge, kind of just, you know, with my eyes closed, holding on to this, waiting to have, you know, to drop this off. And the person in front of me turns around, grabs my shoulders and shaking me. And I look up and it's Federico. And he said, the voices told me to be here at this time because the chosen one is here. And he said, you from last night, come up to the room. So he tells me about the voices, what this means. Now I'm hearing, and his entourage is there. And he goes, she's the one. And
but
while
you had not yet heard the voice yourself at that point. At that point.
But while I'm in the room, the phone rings. Federico picks it up, and he's very wobbly, and he's repeating. Yeah. So he hangs up, and he said, "The voices want you. They've put this moment together. You are to come with us
to Italy."
Called me at
to Tulum. Right. Okay.
And then he goes on to tell me. Well, first, I can see what this phone call means. And he says he thought the phone call was Castaneda playing tricks because Castaneda is and was a trickster. Okay. He was a game player. We can imagine that. So he thought because the whole reason why Federico was in Italy, went from Italy to America, was to meet Carlos Castaneda, he was proposing a movie deal with his books because Federico was at a point in his life that he had done certain films and he thought, I think that I could do a compilation and create something very magical. And that's what was so exciting to him. And he had met Carlos previously years earlier in Rome. And Carlos had told him that Don Juan had said that he and Carlos had gone to see, I think, La Strada in Mexico. And Don Juan said, one day you're going to meet that director and he's going to tell you something very magical. So for Carlos, he thought, oh, it's about my films. Instead, when we met him, we told him, why are you calling us? Why are you making these messages? Why are you making this esoteric? And as we were telling him in a group.
In Mexico, in
Tulum, yes. He got up and he said, I didn't do no such thing. He got really annoyed because Federico was very dogmatic and saying, no, you've been harassing us. And Carlos was saying, I didn't do any such thing. And he got perturbed and he left the room, never to be seen. And so on the return back from Mexico, Federico thought, wow, I came all the way from Rome, I spent all this money, nothing happened, but the phone calls kept happening. And the voice who gave us all colors, Federico was green, Andrea De Carlo was blue, Maurizio Grimaldi was orange. Then we had a yellow one. Then we had a blue one. And I was the pink one. And so we had a violet one and we had a white one. So they were picking. So this story that I'm telling you is not just me saying this to you. There was an entourage of people.
No, I know. I've read your book twice. I know. Well, let me ask you, when and where did you get that very first call from you on the phone? Where were you?
When I left that first time that I met Federico with the package in the hotel room and I left. Right. I went back home because we're going to be traveling. I got a call.
That was your first time you got the call.
I got a call, and they called me. First, I was called First, I was called the chosen one. Then I was called the physical one. I had two names. They weren't quite sure before they gave colors, and they basically said, "We recognize you. You have to stay." They were trying to say, we recognize you and we don't want you to be afraid. That was the first thing that was very important. We see you, we recognize you, and don't be afraid.
Was it now? Can you?
The phone.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you imitate hello, Christina, how are you? What was it like?
This is 1984. It sounded like a mechanical voice. We are talking. So the phone would ring. I would pick it up. It sounded like you're talking on a walkie-talkie. Shh. So you sound, the sound of a walkie-talkie, from that you hear this metallic voice in a non-female, really a metallic voice saying. And as I'm getting this, soon as I pick up and I hear that sound, I am shaking and I'm sweating and I'm feeling something like I've never felt before in my life. And it was very scary. And they're telling me, don't be afraid. And that I am welcomed in this communication. That was the first. During the trip, there was while we were traveling, chasing Castaneda in the jungles, because Carlos, he would do these little goose duck. He'd tell us to meet us here, and then he wouldn't show up, and we'd meet him there. So the whole trip to Tulum was a futile wild goose chase, as I said, to finally meet Carlos. And then when we told him, why are you making these calls? Why do you do other things?
Yeah, he freaked out.
He freaked out because he just
pissed off.
Being cute by making us run around the jungle. Like, ha ha ha! I'm going to make you. Here's your story, making us chase, which pissed Federico off. He had a temper.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But when we came back to LA, that's when the calls started coming in, and the voices said, "We have nothing to do with this man, Carlos Castaneda. Do not. But yeah. I'm thinking that somehow, because Don Juan, who was the character, this esoteric shaman that Carlos saw, here's my thinking, that Don Juan is the real source and maybe we're connecting, but the voices said, we have nothing to do with him. In the meantime, they are calling Tullio Pinelli in Rome, speaking Italian, and giving them information. So they randomly called different people at different timelines, supporting Federico in my journey, what was to be, that there is a film, that we're supposed to do something with colors, music, that there is a message. And they were showing us also that they were outside the timeline. They would tell me something and it would happen the next day or the day after or the 2 weeks after. Like, there was no way that this could have been planned or, put together like a joke. So they were already showing us in that moment that they are outside of a timeline. And one of the things they had said to Tulio and to within our group, that they are on a different dimension. They were not born. They are not died. They're not in our realm of what we call the living species or entities. They are in another realm. And for them to make a phone call, they had to, it was like an enormous amount of energy to reach out and make a contact and to use the phone. It wasn't like a light thing like they pick up and dial anywhere. I did not pick up on a spaceship. However, they did appear to me, and they were your classic alien looking, long faces, big eyes, and they were shape shifting. They were blue, silver, gold.
Was that in dreams? Wasn't that in dreams?
They had the ability to render me like stiff, where I was sitting in the chair and they all of a sudden my eyes were closed and I was frozen and I couldn't move. And they would appear to me.
I see.
And I could feel them touching me and pushing on me. That was very scary.
Oh, yeah.
And they were telepathic. They would tell me in my mind. And then they were gone. Literally, I would fall off the chair because I felt that pressure trying to like open my eyes to see them, even though they let me see them with my eyes closed. It was so scary. It was truly scary. I almost didn't want to see them, but I never get their thoughts out of their mind. And the irony is, when I was a teenager in the forest of that New Jersey, I painted. I was a painter. I painted their face. And at one point I will, I don't think it's in my book, but I have paintings of them decades before that this realization was. But in their contacting me, and for me, this was the big deal. They had said that we should call them you. And I thought to myself, why are they saying the word you? And I think it was, how we say thank you, you're welcome. Mm-hmm. This word you is a personal word, but it's also, as well as personal, it's also pointing to you. It's like a me and a you at the same moment. I felt that the word you was meant to be energetic.
Well, in their case, it was plural. It wasn't one person calling you. It was many entities were calling you as you, as one thing.
Yes. So they had to do this as a collective energy.
Right.
And this took a lot from them. That's why I felt as it was taking a lot of them to make the call. That's why Federico and everyone from the group who did receive the calls, we felt this almost like an energy drain, because it was for me, but it was as well for them. So absolutely. I thought that was very interesting.
Can we get, all right, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can we get you to when you moved to Italy? When you decided after the poem,
yes,
and they went back, and then you relocated to Italy.
Well, they said to me, you must stay near the green one. I was the pink one. They kept saying, stay near the green one, like as to be supportive.
And Fellini's the green one.
And Federico's the green one. So I moved to Rome. I said there was no point in me being LA. There was no story. There was no audition. There was nothing in my realm of world that was more interesting. And I felt this was my calling. I really felt that I've made something so phenomenal in my life. I had to take it to the end. And Federico was so magical, truly magical. One of just also a good person. And so there I am. I'm in Rome. And Federico said, right away, because we had this secret, this voices. I mean, a few people knew about it, like the journalist, Vincenzo Mollica, and the people on the entourage, and even Giulietta Messina. We told her. So we told an inner circle of Federico about this. And I was the girl. So he called me his little sister. So everybody knew that I was sort of like this angel, and my last name is Engelhardt. So that's how he treated me, as his angel. And he took me everywhere. I was his token friend who, when the phone calls would come, we could reason, we could throw I Ching and tarot cards. So all of a sudden I was 24/7 with Federico, and Giulietta was fine, because she knew
his wife.
Yes, Giulietta Messina, his
Right.
wife.
Right.
Loved actors.
So how long did you live in Italy the first go round that you were there?
Well, I moved there. So even though this happened in 84, and that happened in October, and Federico, and then between October and November, this trips the back and forth from Mexico. And so then he flies back in December. And now by January, what am I doing in LA there? And I was getting phone calls, call Federico, call the green one, tell him this, tell him that. And I just said, okay, I'm going to Rome. Plus I remembered Jerry DeMarlo said, you're going to Rome. So I just started traveling to
But you didn't tell Fellini I'm on my way, I'm coming. You just
I said I'm coming. He said, please.
He knew. Okay, he knew you were going. Okay.
Oh yes, no. I wouldn't just show. I said I'm coming in. He was getting calls, so he felt like that I would be a great support system to this great mystery. He called it a haunting. He felt haunted because they wanted something with music and colors. And he said, how can I make a film about people? If I tell this film, they're going to think I'm crazy. And in fact, the book, Towards the Moon with Fellini, is homage to the documentary, the mockumentary film that I did, Towards the Moon with Fellini, alongside him while he was directing The Voice of the Moon, his final film, La Voce della Luna, The Voice of the Moon. And that was this voice. And so he tried to take, because he did a graphic novel. So before the film came out, graphic novel, Trip to Tulum. There we go.
Right.
And this is our story graphically done by Milo Manata. Brilliant. I'm so sorry, out of publication, but it's a collector's find.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a storyboard for any kind of movie that's ever going to happen. And so I'm in Rome trying to, of course, support him, because the voices are telling me there's a film. So Federico says, okay, I'm going to do The Voice of the Moon. But he tells me I cannot do the true story. I did the graphic novel, which was of us going to meet Carlos Castaneda in the jungle. So he felt like that's a storyboard for that. But the voices were not satisfied. They wanted a feature. What voices thinks of this? This is like, I can't understand. Even the aliens know about the movie business, and as a collective conscious. So, of course, instead of me playing a small role in some of the other films that I did with Federico, I said, let me follow you. Let me play as the journalist. Like he always has a journalist in all his movies. So this time I'm the journalist seeking the answers. And by the way, Towards the Moon with Fellini, the documentary I have on YouTube for anybody to see. And I'll tell you why I'm giving it away, this film. So if you just Google on YouTube, or I should say you search on YouTube, Towards the Moon with Fellini, there you can see the trailer. Federico is my co-star.
Right.
And that was so unique. That's truly an honor to have that happen.
That's very cool. Wait, hold on. I have a little surprise. Race number 8. Can we jump ahead? Number 8. All right. This is your wedding day. You fell in love with an Italian. Fellini was at your wedding, which is so cool. And then that night, Christina, the interdimensional people gave you a UFO show, right, on your wedding night. So tell us about that, the UFO event.
So Eugenio Capuccio was a second AD to Federico. And of course, I'm on all the sets and we meet and we fall in love. And, and to me, he was sort of like with all the working with Federico and all the esoterics. And I have this very unique relationship with Federico. And I'm kind of pulled away from my own country, learning Italian. I fall madly in love with Eugenio Capuccio. He's a wonderful, talented person. And so Federico gives his blessing to our marrying. I picked 8888 at 8. And by the way, the whole time Eugenio was hearing the story with the voices, and he says, what is this crazy? Why when I leave the room, the voices call? Why do you need to see Federico every day? He couldn't understand it. And then at the day of our wedding, the voices call him.
Right. He answered the phone and
Their voice. So
got it.
he has that feeling, that experience. So I'm getting ready to get married before he leaves to get married. And he comes into the bathroom. He goes, they called, they spoke to me, and they spoke Italian. And they said that we wish we could be at your wedding, but of course, we spoke Italian to each other. And he said, in Italian, the word alien didn't exist. The word was marziani, which is Martians. Siamo i marziani, non potrei avere la sua matrimonio, ma ci voglio guardare a quel tempo, al 22.
God bless you, whatever you hell you just said.
So what the voices said to Eugenio, which he said to me, he said, the voices said, we wish we could be at your wedding. We cannot, but we will watch from above and just look up at 22:22, which, military time, that's 10:22.
Okay.
So we're having this wedding. Everything is wonderful. And I'm looking at the clock because it's okay. So we go up to the rooftop and we're looking.
Just you and him. Just you and him,
because he got the call and he knows everything that I'm going through with these voices.
And you were expecting Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I don't know. I was already used to them because remember, I've already had 100 calls. This was his first. And so we're looking up at the sky and I see a plane, a light.
Right.
Like a plane, close enough, not a star, not a planet, which you can think further up, but like a plane, and it makes a figure 8.
Oh, that's interesting. The figure 8 on 88.
And they chose the time 22:22, 2, 4, 6, 8.
Interesting.
4 2s, which was 8.
That's also the symbol for infinity.
Correct.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right. So all of that. And that's why as a numerologist, as an intuit, I picked that date as well. I thought, well, if we're going to get married in 88, 88 at 8, and then these voices. So he, of course, sees this little movement. He goes, that's nothing. I go, oh, are you kidding? That's fantastic. You can't ask for a better sign now, because he was expecting gold to come down or gems, or you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
For me, that was a brilliant, wonderful, and
forgive me, I want to go off for a second. Have you seen UFOs? Have you had UFO sightings in addition to that one?
I have seen glimmers of lights. I have seen orbs that go from giant large to really small, come up to my face and move on.
Really? Wow. Okay.
So I've had a lot of orb experience. I've also had a lot of photographs. We have an orb right here around me or over here. So I have a lot of orbs that have stayed close to me. So but
you've not seen because I've seen 4 metallic craft. You've not seen craft. It doesn't sound like yours are orbs or light more.
Yeah, right. I have seen more like clouded gray visions of light. Yes, I think I've seen more of an interdimensional beings versus a spaceship, even though I think I saw lights that I thought, wait, that could have been one, just like that figure 8 going over. Who could have made that light but a spaceship?
Right, sure, of course.
But I would like to say, because they look, so when I came back to America and I was walking by a bookstore, Whitney Schreiber's book, Communion, with the lights and the eyes, I stopped by and I said, oh my God, and I bought the book. And every day that he mentions he had a contact, it's the same day I had a contact.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I've been wanting to talk with Whitney because I said, what are the chances? And I wrote, and I don't know who I was writing to, but I was bombarding him saying, what are the chances that my experiences, even though I felt were more interventional, he would give a date. That's a date, because I kept a journal when every time they called.
Wow, that's interesting. I know him. Actually, Race, you know Whitley Strieber.
I wanted to know that. What are the chances? And I was so impressed with, because remember, back when this was all happening, ufology was still like in its infancy of having real concrete prospects. I mean, it could be this and it could be that. And I just thought, wow. And I just felt, and I think the most important thing for me is if I said 100 phone calls, remember this went on for 9 years.
Yeah,
it wasn't 1 or 2. This went on. I sometimes had 3 or 4 calls a day, and I could go on with the stories. And that's why I say read the book, because there were so many stories of proving to me that they are outside of time. Oh, they prove that many, many times that they are outside of a time. And even though it took so long to write the book, it took so long because I was still trying to make an understanding. And also I was a little afraid. I didn't want them back because they are scary. There's no question.
Right.
In one of the many phone calls, probably the one, if this is a conclusion of our conversation, they usually gave me commands and they would move things around the room. They had a lot of power. They said, you can ask a question. And I thought to myself, oh my God, usually I do all the listening, I'm shaking, and I thinking, what do I ask for, Jesus Christ? Is it? I said, is there reincarnation?
Okay, that's a good one.
Said, absolutely, you've reincarnated, remember, in this metallic voice, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. You have reincarnated, or we all have?
I have, well, we all have. Many of us have, but I in particular have reincarnated many times. They said hundreds, and that I originated from them. So I am one of them who have chosen to reincarnate in the flesh. And
listen, I know you. I believe you.
Ironically, I did my DNA and I have Neanderthal in me. So that means that they visited my Neanderthal uncle.
Oh, that's great. That's so funny.
But I mean, I have to have humor in all of this because it's so unusual.
All right, so get Christina's book, Toward the Moon with Fellini. Where can people, is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, and please go to YouTube and watch the film.
There it is. Yeah, to watch the film, Towards the Moon with Fellini. It's on YouTube. I know there's a trailer there as well. We didn't get to that. Can I just ask you real quick? Tell me about the Betty Boop play on Broadway. There's a Betty Boop play coming on Broadway in April, right?
Yes. April 5th at Broadhurst. And the music is by David Foster. I've been 19 years working for Fleischer Studios, the best people in the whole world. What the best job in the whole world. And we've worked very hard to get to, besides all the licensees, 6,000 licensees, Betty Boop as a character, the Paramount cartoons. And here we are, and David Foster doing the music, Jasmine Amy Rogers playing Betty Boop. Wow. It's just phenomenal. It's all on, just Google it. Can
you get me free tickets for that? I'm serious.
I don't know about free tickets. I'm trying to get, I'm going there for work.
So it's April. What's the date? April something?
5th. April 5th at the Broadhurst.
So you'll be at the opening premiere.
I'll be at the opening, but I'm going for work. So,
if you need a date, because my best friend owns a nightclub in Manhattan, I could stay at his house. Let me know if you could steal me. That would be super fun, man, to go to Betty Boop on Broadway. That'd be great. That's so funny. Listen, I wish we had more time. Thank you so very much. Thank you for being my friend and a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. You have wonderful stories. Check out this book, Toward the Moon with Fellini. I've read it twice. I really recommend it because I know Christina. There you go. I know her, and her storytelling in that book is riveting. I spent last weekend rereading it, and it's just blew my mind. I love it, and I love you. I think you're wonderful. I'll see you at the party. That's it for me. Next week, I have Michael Ian Black is my guest. He's one of the stars of the new CNN show called Have I Got News for You? He's a comedian and he's a UFO enthusiast, as we all are. And I'll be meeting him for the first time. So everyone, have a good week. Thank you for watching live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.